Hi, everybody. How are you? I hope you're doing okay. I hope, like this gorgeous dog, you're swimming vigorously in the currents of life, not letting anything overwhelm you or get you down. And I hope you're keeping your head above water. I know many of you are feeling overwhelmed. The coronavirus pandemic is scary, it's confusing, it's causing many changes that we can't control. And the lack of control is itself frustrating and a cause of anxiety. And also there's fear, that we might contract the virus. And we know that people in our state are dying. And it's scary and it's sad. If I may, I'm going to offer a little piece of advice. When you're feeling down and when you're feeling scared, look for someone whose situation is worse than yours and help that person. Helping other people helps us. There are a lot of people these days doing a lot of great things around the coronavirus pandemic. You know that we need face masks. There are people sewing face masks at home and sending them to friends who are vulnerable. There are people volunteering in hospitals. There are people visiting neighbors who are old and sick and making sure that they have groceries. If you don't know what to do, I recommend that you call a local church or synagogue or mosque or temple or any religious institution and say, hey, I want to volunteer. I want to do something. You don't have to spend a lot of time. An hour a week is a great thing. And by helping other people, you'll be helping yourself. Okay, let's go through the questions I asked you last week and let me give you the answers. I asked, what punctuation is missing in the highlighted area? And the punctuation that's missing is a comma. And why? Because it's a fanboy between two independent clauses. He noticed how the mom downstairs would always be focused on her phone and computer. Oops, sorry, I'm reading the wrong part. Let me go up a couple of lines. The family in the building, he observed the family in the building to his right, comma, and he saw how even they lived far apart. So he's observing the family in the building to the right, that's an independent clause, and that's a fanboy. He saw how even they lived far apart, that's another independent clause. So you're connecting two independent clauses with a fanboy, the word and. So the comma goes before and, it goes before but, it goes before or, it goes before yet, so, for, if you have two independent clauses. Lived distance needed to be rephrased because distance is a verb, and our author wanted an adverb to describe how these people are living, and for that we'll say far apart. They lived far apart. What punctuation is missing? During rush hour. That's a prepositional phrase. When you begin a sentence with a prepositional phrase, you put a comma at the end of the prepositional phrase. During rush hour, comma. In the box, comma. At 6 o'clock, comma. On campus, comma. These are all prepositional phrases. Prepositions are words that give you location or time. So we needed to put a comma there. Answering texts on the call or scrolling through social media, that's not a sentence. So we need to make it a sentence. We're going to add a noun and a verb. They were answering texts on the call or scrolling through social media. So that's how we fix that issue, by adding a subject and a verb and making it a sentence. What punctuation is missing here? Why? Excuse me. Outside, comma, the full moon was shining on the streets. The reason you put a comma after outside is because it's an introductory element. What's an introductory element? It's not an independent clause. It's a word or a group of words. Could be one word like outside, could be a prepositional phrase like in the box that you put in front of an independent clause. The full moon was shining. That's an independent clause. It can stand by itself. But you're adding the word outside to say where the full moon is shining. So you have an introductory element. After that introductory element, you put a comma. Outside, the full moon was shining. How do you know it's an introductory element? You could take it away. You could take out the word outside and you still have an independent clause. The full moon was shining. So outside, comma, the full moon was shining. On the meadow, comma, the full moon was shining. On the roof of the building, comma, the full moon was shining. The full moon is still shining, and those introductory elements, you can remove them and you still have an independent clause, so you put a comma after them. A punctuation is missing. In the other building, that's another introductory element. This one is a prepositional phrase. In is a preposition, like in the box, in the drawer, in my hand, in my pocket. In plus a noun is a prepositional phrase. In the other building, comma, Thomas was sitting on his bed. So that's why you need the comma there, because it's an introductory element. What kind of introductory element is it? It's a prepositional phrase. What punctuation is needed here? Period. His wife Rebecca was in the other room. That's a full sentence. Finish it. Put a period. His wife Rebecca was in the other room, period. You have a subject, Rebecca. You have a verb, was. It's an independent clause. Put a period. What punctuation is needed here? In the building, behind Thomas's building, that's an introductory element. It's a prepositional phrase, preposition. In, on, under, over, through. Anything you can do to a box or a clock before 6 o'clock, after 6 o'clock, at 6 o'clock. Words that show location and time. They're called prepositions. If you have a preposition plus a noun in the beginning of a sentence, you put a comma afterwards. And here we have two prepositions. In the building, that's one. Behind Thomas's building, that's two. So you need a comma there. Okay, let's look at one more. From the short time that I have been working at home, you need a comma. You've got another introductory element. You've got another prepositional phrase. From the short time that I've been working at home, comma. Introductory element must be followed by a comma. Next one. Even though working from home has its benefits, even though is a subordinating conjunction. Subordinating conjunctions introduce dependent clauses. If the dependent clause comes first, you put a comma afterwards. And we went through this in class a bazillion times. Even though working from home has its benefits, comma, there are also many downfalls. When working from home, that's another introductory element. If you begin a sentence with an introductory element, you have to put a comma afterwards. How do I know it's an introductory element? Because there is an independent clause there. There are more distractions. That's a complete sentence. You have a subject, there, you have a verb, are. It's a complete sentence. So if you have a bunch of words before the independent clause, then you have to put a comma before that bunch of words if they themselves are not an independent clause. So since we've talked so much about introductory elements, let's talk some more. Introductory clauses, and I'm about to give you a bunch of different kinds of introductory elements. There's introductory clauses, there are introductory phrases, and there are introductory words. So in other words, the word or words that come before the independent clause, I study, that's an independent clause. You have a subject and you have a verb. Those word or words that come before the independent clause are called introductory elements. Sometimes they're clauses, sometimes they're phrases, and sometimes they're words. And we're going to go through the whole list. Introductory clauses are dependent clauses that begin with subordinating conjunctions. And by now you should know the subordinating conjunctions: even though, when, if, etc. If I go to the movies, comma, I will buy popcorn. Even though the movies are closed, comma, I'm watching movies at home on my computer. When I go to the movies, comma, I like to sit up front. If, even though, and when, subordinating conjunctions introducing dependent clauses. If they want to win, comma, athletes must exercise every day. Because Smokey kept barking insistently, we threw the ball for him. That because Smokey kept barking insistently cannot stand alone. It needs to be linked to an independent clause. If it comes first in the sentence, we put a comma afterwards. And then this handout gives you a list of words that begin dependent clauses: after, although, as, because, before, if, since, though, until, when. After I go shopping, comma, I get a pedicure. Although I have not gone shopping, comma, I'm getting a pedicure at home. As I walked to the store, comma, I met my friend Frank. Because I want to lose weight, comma, I'm not eating ice cream. Before I went to class, comma, I washed my hands. If they lift the lockdown, comma, I'm going to go to the movies. Since you've been a good student, comma, you're going to get a great grade. Though I like her a lot, comma, I never spend time with her. Until he asks me to marry him, comma, I will not have sex with him. When we do have sex, comma, we will use a condom. Okay. Introductory phrases. Phrases are not complete sentences. They don't have a subject, they don't have a verb, but they are a group of words. And if there's an introductory phrase at the beginning of a sentence, it needs to be followed by a comma. And there are many different kinds of introductory phrases, and you don't need to learn them all. Like, you don't need to learn how to recognize a participial phrase. But you should look for this. If the independent clause, the full sentence, is introduced by a group of words that don't have a subject and don't have a verb, that's an introductory phrase and it needs a comma. So the first kind is an infinitive phrase: to stay in shape for competition. There's no subject there, there's no verb there. It's an infinitive phrase. It's starting the sentence, it's followed by a comma. To stay in shape for competition, athletes must exercise every day. To succeed at school, students must study every day. To get to Pennsylvania, comma, you must drive west. Then there's the participial phrase, which we have talked about in class. Barking insistently, comma, Smokey got us to throw his ball for him. Wearing noisy shoes, comma, the student interrupted the class. Raising her hand enthusiastically, comma, Sue was always called on by the teacher. Then there's an appositive phrase. We did not talk about appositive phrases in class, but they're really easy to understand. An appositive phrase is a group of words that describe the subject. A popular and well-respected mayor, comma, Bailey was the clear favorite in the campaign for governor. Tall and well-built, comma, Judy had a lot of boyfriends. Making a lot of noise, comma, the refrigerator was worrying the mother. And I'm going to go down to the bottom one, the prepositional phrase. We've gone over this so many times. I really hope you get it, although you guys are still making mistakes with prepositional phrases in your papers. After the adjustment for inflation, comma, real wages have decreased while corporate profits have grown. And then there are like single words that can be introductory elements. So to review, we've gone over clauses, that is a noun and a verb, that can be introductory elements. We've gone over phrases that are just a group of words that can be introductory elements, and also there can be just a single word. Meanwhile, the athletes trained on the Nautilus equipment. Still, the credibility of some witnesses was in question. And we'll do more with these introductory elements at the end of this lecture. But first, I'd like to go over some of the papers that you and your fellow students wrote for the assignment, Words of Advice. So this was written by one of your fellow students. Let's read the whole thing, and then I'm going to ask you what you think of it. Putting words together for people or someone in need can change someone's day. But being that I'm a young and ignorant age, I feel as though I'm unable to give wise advice to those who need it. This all changed on April 1st, when everyone thought the quarantine was over. I work outside for my dad for his landscape company. When I work for him, I mulch, drive trucks and machines. On this sun-shining April day, I was spreading mulch for my dad in mountain lakes. When I was out and about, I saw that there were many more people than the previous day. As I finished the mulching job, which came out beautiful, I began my drive back to the yard where we store our trucks. My dad came up to me as I drove into the yard. My father asked me if I could make a quick mulch delivery to our Aunt Sally. I agreed, and he loaded my truck with 9 yards of mulch. The route I was taking was familiar to me, and I have done this route many times with snow-covered roads. The drive was simple, and all I had to do was drive up to Montclair. When pressing on the pedal of the truck, I immediately got cut off by a panicked driver. It almost caused me to have a panic attack, but I continued my way. This kept happening as I went down the road, and these dumb things caused me to have a panic, it stayed with me. I finally made it to my Aunt Sally's house after enduring all that pain and stress. As I drove back to the yard, people continued to cut me off, and one guy wouldn't let me in the road. Then finally, I made it back unscathed, and the truck was not damaged. After this experience, I needed some help getting over what I have endured. I noticed that I had gotten an assignment to give words of advice. I read the passages that I was given thoroughly, and one of the quotes from the reading stood out to me. A quote written by William Saroyan, and they said, "No man's guilt is not yours, nor is any man's innocence a thing apart." And this opened my mind. When reading this quote multiple times, it had come more clear that the little things should not be a burden to me if someone else does it. Then I began to come up with my own words of advice. My words of advice that I can give is to keep moving forward, and the present is like a gift. From another people's advice, I was able to make my own. Okay, so what I'd like you to do in your notes, please write this down, is I want you to tell me what is your overall reaction to this piece of writing. What did it make you think or feel? Please write at least 3 full sentences. Give me your thoughts, your feelings, and what you thought of your fellow students' writing. And please pause the lecture right now so that you can write that down. Okay, I have to say that this piece was one of my favorite pieces of writing this week. I've been reading your writing all semester, and this is one of the few pieces that involves action and movement. There is action in the piece, in the cars cutting off the speaker. There is also movement. The speaker moves from feeling too young and naive to offer a quote, to feeling panic, to feeling that he has something worthwhile to say. I really like the details. Remember, a writer's job is to tell the reader who, what, when, where, why, how. And this author does all those things. What? 9 yards of mulch. Who? Aunt Sally. Where? Mountain Lakes. When? April 1st. Why? Because his father asked him. How? Panic. I like how the author engages his own experience with the William Saroyan quote. I like how real and honest this felt. It's rooted in real life and the author's genuine feelings. There are no cliches. Of course, the writing could use some corrections. There are errors in the writing, and I'm going to ask you to fix up these errors. So in your notes, number 2, the highlighted area contains a redundancy. What I want you to do for question number 2 is tell me what is a redundancy and tell me how do you fix it. So how do you fix for people or someone in need? Then there's another redundancy in the highlighted area. Young, ignorant age. How are you going to fix that redundancy? And the next thing, you've got 3 items in a series. This is something we've talked about. I like baseball, comma, basketball, comma, and soccer. I like to jog, comma, to swim, comma, and to play tennis. Some students go to CCM, some go to William Patterson, some go to Princeton. When you've got 3 items in a series, you put commas between the items, but you also have to make sure that the items are symmetrical. They're all written the same way. Notice baseball, basketball, soccer, 3 nouns. To jog, to swim, to play tennis, 3 infinitives. CCM, William Patterson, Princeton, 3 institutions of higher education. Now look at these 3 items. When I work for him, number 1, I mulch. Number 2, drive trucks. Number 3, end machines. These 3 items need to be made symmetrical. They need to be the same kind of word. So how are you going to fix that? And then the next one. After I finished the mulching job, which came out beautiful. Beautiful is an adjective. It describes nouns, but he's trying to describe a verb. So what kind of word do you use to describe a verb, and how would you fix that sentence? Okay, here's the next student paper. At the beginning of 2020, the whole world was talking about the coronavirus rising in the East, but we never thought it was going to reach every corner of the globe. Nobody said to strap in and prepare for impact. We never saw it coming, and we were not prepared for it. The chaos caused by COVID-19 across the world is frightening. Countries throughout the globe are on lockdown. COVID-19 has spread worldwide, creating panic in every human soul. Fear overcomes us when we realize the threat that we are facing. COVID-19 has unexpectedly flipped our lives upside down. Even though every nation is taking all the right measures to contain the spread of this virus, it seems all efforts are made in vain because the virus keeps getting stronger each day. Fear is understandable and widespread. When we are put through extreme circumstances, we pull through and come back stronger than before. As of now, we are united because we are facing an enemy that does not see color, social status, or religion. When it comes to difficult times, we must work together with a common goal of helping each other. In the Time of Your Life says, we must enjoy the beauty of life. However, our lives must not be filled with hate or negativity about ourselves or others. There will be times when we must make difficult decisions and we must face them without fear and regret. In difficult times, we must show compassion and support those in need. Now is not a time for hate and negativity. In our lifetimes, we must make difficult decisions and face our fears, but we must not let our fears overwhelm us. COVID-19 is the unexpected pandemic that we are facing now. However, we must stand tall and keep high hopes for a prompt turnaround to normalcy. Life will always put us to the test with potential crisis, but it is essential that we join forces and work together to overcome the challenges it imposes on us. Okay, so question number 6 is, what is your overall impression of this piece? Please write at least 3 sentences. What do you think of the writing? How did this make you feel? What would you like the writer to do differently? So my first reaction to this piece is that the author of this piece can feel proud. It's one of the better written pieces. There are few errors and good vocabulary use. Even so, there are things I want the writer to do differently. One of the first things I want to tell you as a writer is to be wary of, to be very careful of. Be careful when you use words like the whole world, never, every corner of the globe, all, every, never, all. Are you sure? Are you sure that every corner of the globe has been touched? Are you sure that nobody saw this coming? Are you sure that everybody is taking the right measures? Nah, that's not true. None of those statements is true. So as a writer, be really cautious when you use words like every, never, and all. Then there's some advice, and the advice is highlighted. In difficult times, we must show compassion and support those in need. Now is not a time for hate and negativity. In our lifetimes, we must make difficult decisions and face our fears, but we must not let our fears overwhelm us. That's good advice. But I want this author to show me this behavior in real life. I want this author to tell me a story of someone showing compassion, someone showing support. And then I will believe his words. But right now they just look like words on a page to me because I don't have any concrete examples. Okay, let's look at one more piece of writing by one of your fellow students. There are a lot of things that I am learning through this pandemic. A few things that I'm learning is that when America puts its differences aside, that it is an amazing thing. Another thing I'm learning through this pandemic is that we need to start putting the threat of infectious disease very seriously. The last thing that I'm learning is that we need to do a better job of listening to health professions. The reason I said that I'm learning that when America puts its differences aside, that's a beautiful thing, is because you see that no matter race, gender, ethnicity, religion, party, side, we all coming together to beat something that we can't even see. Everyone is coming together, cheering on nurses, doctors, essential business people to try to help them out and say thank you. I think if Americans put their differences aside all the time, we could be a very powerful nation. Another thing that I learned during this pandemic is that we need to start researching more about infectious disease and taking it very seriously. I say this because we were not ready for this outbreak whatsoever. We didn't have enough testing. We didn't have enough information about the disease to stop it, and we have to start. We can't let another outbreak like this take so many American lives away because we can stop it if we put enough resources to it. We have to be ready for the next test that we are put up against, and we can't have something like this again. We have to be ready to stop it. The last thing that I've learned during this pandemic is that I have to start listening to the medical professionals. A lot of people weren't listening to the medical professionals' advice when this disease first started happening because everyone thought this was fake and a hoax. We need to listen to them the first time they say something so something like this won't happen again. We need to do what they say, like stay indoors and social distance. This is not a joke, and we need to listen to them so that they don't have to go through what they are going through again. In closing, we can do better as a country and as a world about this pandemic. We need to do better, and we need to get out in front of the curve so that something like this won't happen again. Okay, so my next question for you is, what is your reaction to this piece of writing? And I want you to give me a real answer. I want you to imagine that you are this student's teacher, and you want to help this student to become a better writer. What do you say to this student to help this student become a better writer? Okay, here's my feedback for this writer, and it's going to be a little bit tough. There are relatively few mistakes in this piece, and one of the good things that the author does is he lists three topics that he's going to write about in his 3 subsequent paragraphs, and that's a good thing. But here's my complaint. In his very first paragraph, he doesn't capitalize the word I, and he doesn't capitalize the word America. And that really bugs me. It's in his second sentence. A few things that I'm learning. Small I for I'm. If this student is going to be writing a report, and I know what the student wants to do for a living, and he's going to have to be writing reports, and those reports are going to be scanned by lawyers and judges and his fellow professionals, and if he does not capitalize a word like I or America, they're not going to take him seriously. So yes, if you make small errors like that, you do sabotage yourself. So what I'm asking you to do is to write a rough draft where you make errors like that, and then when you write your final draft, you fix those errors. You do not hand me inferior work, because by doing so, you insult me and you sabotage yourself. Okay, let's look at one more paper from one of your fellow students. Words of advice. I do not have any because I do not think I am at that level of life that I should advise someone. I feel like that is for someone who has seen many things and has experienced different things. I feel like when people advise, they have many advices in one statement. It is amazing for me to hear pieces of advice from elder people or famous people in different languages. I understand 3 languages. The quotes I hear are filled with so much wisdom. The one that comes to mind at this moment is from Hazrat Abu Bakr Sadiq. One of the worst sins is a person taking his sins lightly. I feel like generation after generation, people are taking their sins lightly, and that is why I feel people have become more corrupt. To list a few is nudity, drugs, cursing, lying, two-facing, exploitation, backbiting, and many more. It has divided us. In the Time of Your Life, Live by William Saroyan is a bit of very beautiful advice that everyone should implement. It is for male, female, young, and old. That we must live our lives enjoying the beauty of each day. We should accept ourselves and others as they are, and that we should find the good things in them. We should ignore the flaws in others and not think any less of them. We should despise the bad actions, not the one who does them. As we are equal, no one is then anyone. We must live and enjoy our time alive, and the pain and sorrow of the world must not reign over us in our lifetimes. The thing I am learning during this pandemic is how to control myself. I feel like I am spoiled. I am practicing how to control my earthly desires because those are holding me back. Once I am in control of my mind, I know I can easily do anything in life. The only thing holding me back is my mind. I hope to get this done before the pandemic ends. I feel like if I do not do it by then, I would be swallowed by the fake world around me. So my question is for you is, what is your overall reaction to this piece? And again, I want you to pretend that you are this student's teacher and you're giving this person advice. You want to help him improve as a writer. You want to tell him what he's doing right. So what will you say to the person who wrote this piece? Please give me at least 3 sentences. Okay, so I would like to see the author of this piece attend to the following. Either the punctuation or the word order of the highlighted area needs to change. What changes will you make? And the highlighted area to which I refer is words of advice. I do not have any. Either the punctuation here needs to change or the order of the words needs to change. So how would you rewrite that highlighted section? And then following up on that, the author says twice, I feel like, I feel like. What are you going to do with that? It is something I've talked about in class. Should you keep saying, I feel, I think, I feel, in my opinion, in your writing? And how do you change it? Okay, the next highlighted area, to hear pieces of advice from elder people or famous people, period. Is that a full sentence? Does it have a subject and a verb? How are you going to fix that? Next highlighted area, in different languages. Is that a full sentence? Does it have a subject and a verb? How are you going to change that? My next question is the student uses the word nudity to mean a sin. Is nudity really a sin? What does the student really mean? Can you give me a better word to put there? Because nudity just means not having any clothes on, and not having any clothes on is not a sin. So I think the student wants to be using a different word. What word should the student be using? Number 14, two-facing is not a word. So can you give the student a word to put in that spot? Now, you notice that I highlight the entire final paragraph. This is a really good paragraph. It's the most interesting part of the paper. I think the student should just delete the first couple paragraphs and write an entire paper based on that final paragraph. Tell me, if the student did write a paper based on that final paragraph, what could he write about? What would you want to see him write about? What specific details would you want to see included in a paper based on that final paragraph? Okay, here's the final student paper we're going to talk about. Today in present time, an invisible virus is killing our people. It all started in Wuhan, China. People started getting sick. They were treating it as a common cold, but it was worse. One by one, people started dying, collapsing on the floor, just like in Scary Movie, but it was real life. Hospitals were full of sick people, doctors and nurses fighting against this invisible virus. The worst was to come, that it was spreading around the world. The only word of advice from our leader was stay indoors, not to have any contact with our friends or family, because thousands of people die in China. By the time the leader of our country tries to stop the contagious, it was too late. All international travels had gone out of infected countries, bringing to their country with them the invisible virus. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing. If you want to, you can read the whole thing. But my next question, my next statement, is that this student is a very hardworking student, a very good student, a very caring student. The problem with the piece is that there are many errors. There are errors in capitalization. There are errors in punctuation. There are errors in grammar. There's errors in spelling. What do I recommend to this student? For this student, English is a second language. English is not the student's first language. So I strongly recommend that the student immerse herself in the English language. Spend time speaking English every day, all day. Do not speak your native language. I know that's hard. I know it's emotionally difficult. I have lived overseas myself. I lived in Africa. I lived in Asia. I also had to immerse myself in a foreign language in order to learn that language. The second piece of advice I have for the student is I want the student to read books in English, not just magazine articles, but entire books. You can start with relatively easy books, books written for young adults, and then you can progress to more difficult books. The third piece of advice I have for the student is to work with tutors. There are tutors available on campus, including through the internet. And the fourth piece of advice I have for the student is to do drills, grammar drills, and there are drills online. So there's 4 things that that student can do to get up to speed. Okay, I have some final questions for you. I want you to write down in your notes examples of each one of the following introductory elements that are followed by a comma. In other words, I want you to give me a sample sentence with a dependent clause followed by a comma. And then after that, I want you to give me examples of sentences with introductory phrases. Give me a sample infinitive phrase. Give me a sample participial phrase. Give me a sample appositive phrase. And you can just follow all these examples. And then finally, give me a sample of just a single word, comma, like meanwhile, comma, and still, comma. Okay? That's not too hard. So you can do that in the notes. And the final thing I'll say is, again, I know that we're having tough times, but if you keep your head up, and if you keep a positive attitude, and if you keep an attitude of gratitude where you are grateful for the good things in your life, you're going to overcome every obstacle you confront. You're going to thrive, you're going to survive, and you're going to succeed. Have fun.